This is Antic, the Atari 8-bit podcast.
Hi, this is Kevin Savitz, and this is an interview edition of Antic, the Atari 8-bit podcast. Scott Adams is probably best known for his line of text adventures for early personal computers, including AdventureLand, Pirate Adventure, Mystery Funhouse, and many others. He's also the founder of Adventure International, the company that brought Atari users myriad programs including Preppie, Rally Speedway, Whomper Stomper, and lots of others. The company also released countless programs for TRS-80, Commodore, Apple II, and other platforms. This interview took place March 16, 2015.
So, of course, you're best known for the text adventure games. How did you get started with computers, and can you just kind of give us the backstory?
I actually got started with computers long before that. I was fortunate enough that when I was in high school, back in 1968, I think it was, 69 in that realm, our high school was a test bed for the state of Florida. They decided they were going to put a computer terminal in a high school somewhere and see what would happen. And it happened to be the high school I was at, and it was in the math science department I was at. I discovered it in 11th grade and just really, or 12th grade, 11th to 12th grade in that time frame. It was 12th grade. I remember falling in love with it. And I remember my very first major program I wrote was doing tic-tac-toe. So I was always interested in games and computers. From there, I moved on to college, and just before I finished college, actually I went for a couple of years, and I was working in the computer science department of the college, which was an amazing story in itself, but we're not going there today. What is interesting in the gaming world, I went downrange and I was working for RCA as a contractor, and their contract was to Space Defense Command out in Colorado. And so I was working in radar bases downrange in Ascension Island and then later on Antigua Island. And I remember on Antigua Island, it wasn't a 24-hour satellite tracking, so they only had one shift, which means in the evening, as one of the programmers, actually the programmer on the base, I was able to get a hold of the machine and use it for whatever I wanted. And this was a Xerox Sigma 7, big old mainframe. These things are really large. And we had a radar scope that they were using for tracking radar. Well, I got a Star Trek game that I had come across that was written for a teletype, for a PDP-11 or something. Anyway, I got it running on the Sigma machine on the teletype, and then I thought, there's a CRT over there. I wonder if I could do something with this. And I actually got the video game using the tracking console to play on there. So it was probably the world's biggest video game at the time. It was a lot of fun.
Nice.
And then went on from there. And the adventure games came later. This was in 78. I was working for Stomper Carlson telephone company, and I was doing programming for what was going to be the digital central office. This was the changeover when phones were starting to go from all analog mechanical switches into the digital world. So I was doing embedded software for them for that equipment. We had a central computer, a big deck mainframe, and we all had terminals and stuff that we were working off of. Found out from the IT department they had gotten a neat game in. They knew I liked games and computers, and it was called Colossal Caves. And so I would come in every day, an hour or so before work, and stay for a couple hours after work, and just play Colossal Caves, and had a blast with it. Actually, there was another couple of computers in between that, which I forgot. Back up just a slight bit.
Sure.
Let's see, this was in the early 70s, before I was working at Stromberg. My brother built a bit-slice homebrew computer from parts. And there's actually a video on my website, and I actually developed a game for that. It was using a TV and a keyboard. It was totally a homebrew hacker job, as it were. The game that I wrote literally in machine language. Wasn't even assembler because there was no assembler. I had to hand assemble it, and I had to figure out how to link all the modules. Came up with a linking scheme, and I got it to run. And my brother took a video of it, and I actually have it running on my webpage if anybody's interested in that.
Wow, what was the game?
It was it's sort of a side-scrolling space game where you were trying to blast enemies. So it was just a space war game. I followed that by my first, what I called what was a kit computer. There were two very early computers, the MITS Altair and the Sphere, as in the large globe Sphere. And they came out about the same time. I ordered the Sphere, and it was a kit computer that actually had a keyboard and screen. I remember I was down on Antigua at the time when I was building this, so it came in down there. And when I got the machine and finally got it running, I had a lot of fun with it. One of the first things I did, well, after I got it working and understood it, was I wrote this time in assembler again, a tank war game. I don't remember if you remember the arcade game Tank War, where you'd have two players playing against each other, sort of looking through a screen, and then they'd have dual controllers where like a tank, you could push them forward with each hand. You could either push forward or pull back. Push forward means that tread was moving forward. Pulled back means the tread was going backwards. In the middle, it was stationary. So I actually built sets of controllers, had two boxes with them, and then with a fire button on each one. And on the screen, you'd see the two tanks on a top-down view, and you could have a tank war game. Sphere then came out with their first contest saying, what do you use your Sphere for? And I sent in a video of that and a description, and I actually won the contest for the first game. Sadly, that company went under, and it's long since gone, but it was quite memorable at the time. So fast forward, working at Stromberg, playing Adventure, and at this time I had gotten my first what I called an appliance computer. It was actually all assembled. I didn't have to build anything. It was ready to go, and it was a TRS-80 Model 1 from Radio Shack. And I played the Colossal Caves Adventure, and that's when I said, wow, this is so much fun. I've been wanting to do something in BASIC because I had never used BASIC before. To me, it was a high-level language compared to assembler and machine language. And I thought, I wonder if I could write a game like Adventure on the TRS-80. And I mentioned it to friends at work, and they laughed at me. Said, that is totally impossible. We've got a big mainframe this is running on. That's a little 16K toy. It's not going to be able to do anything. So I thought about it, and then I came up with a way to do it. And what I did was I first, in effect, invented my own language for writing adventure games. I then wrote a compiler that compiled the language, and then I wrote a emulator or an engine that could then read the language or think of it as a database. And so I developed the language and my first adventure all simultaneously, and that was what AdventureLand was. And I got done with that and thought, this is pretty cool. I wonder if anybody else would like to play it. And I think I placed an ad in Softside Magazine. I think that was the name of it at the time. And I put that out on the market, got lots of responses. People were buying it and doing pretty well, selling copies here and there. And then suddenly we get a call, or my wife got a call from a fellow in Chicago. I was down in Florida. I remember the name, Manny Garcia, and he had a Radio Shack up there, and he wanted to buy 50 copies because he had a TRS-80 club there, and he knew he could sell a bunch of them. And so, sure, sell you 50 copies, and here's the price. I think they were like $15. And you literally had to explain to me what wholesale meant and why you give a discount to someone buying it. So I spent all weekend making 50 copies of tapes, one by one, putting them in, recording. And sent them to him, and he got them, and he got a call back. He says, this is great. Where's the packaging? And I went,
I didn't hear you. Where's the what?
Packaging.
Oh,
and it's like, oh, you want packaging? He says, yeah, I sold all those. They're all gone already, but I can move a lot more of these, but they got to have packaging. I want to put them in the store. And I went, oh, great. What am I going to do? Oh, might sell another 50 or 100 of these. How am I going to do packaging? What can I do? Looked at different packaging companies and, oh, sure, we can do packaging. How many 50,000 lots do you want? And it's like, no, this isn't going to work. I need something small. Had an infant daughter at that time, and she was on formula. And I remember there was plastic shell baby bottles, and then you put a plastic liner inside the baby bottle, put the formula in, and put the lid on. Mm-hmm. Well, I took one of those baby bottle liners. I said, size is kind of interesting, and the cassette tape fit right inside it. And I thought, if I get a foldable business card on the top, staple it, drill a hole, I'd have packaging. And indeed, that's exactly what I did. And I sold a bunch for a long time with that packaging.
Okay, so you pretty much invented software in baggies, right?
Indeed. You got to realize nobody was selling software at this point because there was nothing to sell.
No, I know, yeah,
for.
Absolutely. I remember early software stores. You go in there and just be sometimes software in baggies.
Yep.
Awesome.
So that was the beginning of the Adventure International line. I called the company Adventure International. Mm-hmm. Did a number of games, text adventures for the TRS-80 because TRS-80, as you well know, was not a graphics-oriented machine.
Sure.
Couldn't do much there.
So why'd you call it? Before you go on, why'd you choose the name Adventure International? Because you're doing text adventures.
I was doing adventure games, and I thought it sounded big.
Okay.
And later, actually, during its lifetime, Adventure International really did go international. We had publishing both in Japan and in the UK. And
your AdventureLand game was that was more or less Colossal Cave, right? I mean,
no, not at all. It was similar to Colossal Cave in that you went and had to discover treasures, and you had to get all the treasures to a certain place. But the game itself, totally different than Colossal Cave.
Okay, it's time for me to play it again.
Yes. And I won't give it away. There's some good stuff in there.
Okay.
It just Colossal Caves gave me the idea of what I could do. I did not try to copy it because I knew I couldn't, and I didn't want to. I wanted to do my own game, and so that's what I did. I remember when the Atari came out, and that was really a big deal that they are announcing their computer. And besides the software publishing house, and we branched out besides the adventure games, we had a pretty deep catalog, maybe 20, 30 pages of stuff in there. We also published from other game authors, too, during the time. Mm-hmm. My adventure games, I kept rewriting the basic engine and putting it on other machines because it was a fairly easy transfer. So that helped go multi-platform and exposed us to a lot of platforms. Got over to the Atari, and at the time we also had a store that we were selling software supplies from in Longwood. And I remember thinking, wow, people really like these. We have a lot of traffic in here. I wonder if we can sell the Atari computers. And for quite a while, we were doing that. We tried to sell Radio Shack computers, and we actually sold those for a while because we found some dealers that would sell them to us out the back door because they just wanted to get their numbers up. Radio Shack did not want anyone selling it but them, but we actually sold quite a few until they really started tightening the screws. And then that's when we switched over selling Atari computers. I got the Atari, started using it, and thought, this is a really good machine. I like a lot of things about it. I remember Star Raiders vividly. That was an incredible cartridge. Anybody who's had an Atari and played Star Raiders knows what I'm talking about. That was really groundbreaking on what he was able to do. That was probably one of the cartridges that helped move the machine into a lot of homes.
Yeah.
So I went ahead and got my games transferred over, and they were just text at that point. And about this time, Sierra came out with their first graphic adventure game. which later became Sierra Online. That was started by Williams.
Ken and Roberta.
Ken and Roberta. Ken actually was originally a salesman for me on the East Coast, which is kind of interesting. Broderbond, also the guy who started Broderbond, Doug Carlson, was an author for me originally. So there was the AI has had a lot of, if you drew a history of computer gaming, it's up there at the very pinnacle of it, where things came from. But anyway, thought it would be good to get graphics into this. So I worked with my graphic artist. By this time, I had an artist who was doing packaging for us, an outside firm. His name was Preppie. And so we developed a graphic version of the game. The other thing I developed was because we had the store, and later we had more stores, we needed a cash register system. And at that time, you could buy, I think it was NEC cash registers, and they were pretty pricey, $10,000 range for cash registers, kind of ridiculous. I thought, this is a really good computer. I wonder if I can write a cash register program. And indeed, I did. And we called it CRIS. It was called Cash Register Inventory System. Got it working for our stores. It allowed our salesmen, we had a number of them, to get commissions on sales and keep track of inventory. And so we went ahead and also sold that. You look through our old catalogs, you'll find that in there too. And that was all based on the Atari system. So I have very fond memories of that machine.
Awesome. So it sounded like your engine, your adventure engine thing was almost like a virtual machine sort of thing, so maybe you could use the same code across different machines? It used a binary database that once I had the engine running, I could move the database over and use it exactly as it was. Oh, that's awesome.
Yep.
Cool. And which is what Infocom ended up doing with their Z machine later, and that's the same sort of deal. Neat.
Yep.
Neat. I didn't know at all about the cash register system. That's awesome that you've developed a product for yourself and were able to sell it as well.
Yep. We had a number of utility programs too. If you ever get a chance to look through a catalog, there's probably some online. There was quite a few different utilities and programs available. The Atari was a very, very popular machine for us. And we supported it very heavily. I was looking through the list a little while ago of it. Just Atari Mania kind of has a list by publisher, and I don't know, when you think Scott Adams Adventures International, you think Text Adventures, but I mean, you guys did early releases of Preppie and Sea Dragon, and Preppie was actually the only game we ever produced that won awards. We won Game of the Year for that. Remember that that year. And it was literally a Frogger ripoff, but with enough of a twist that we didn't get sued, and for whatever reason, the people who were doing Frogger didn't target the Atari market at all. So it became a runaway bestseller. People just loved it. And Sea Dragon was also a lot of fun too.
On a personal note, your Lunar Lander game was. My dad and I pirated a lot of software, but Lunar Lander was like one of 4 programs that we actually owned.
Oh, very good. I'm glad to hear that. Recently, I saw on eBay, somebody sent me a link that a pristine Lunar Lander copy went for some outrageous amount of money. We're talking $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. I mean, this thing, that's crazy.
Wow.
Absolutely crazy. So I don't know if you still have your original copy.
I think I do. I'm pretty sure I do.
You should check on eBay and see if it has any value. I don't know if there's collectors out there or what's going on, but I thought, wow, that is really fascinating.
That's weird. I'll look into that. I see people on eBay asking that amount of money for things occasionally, but people actually paying that amount is it's a whole other deal.
And then you wonder, did it really sell for that, or did somebody pay somebody else to sell it so they could jack up the price and then try to do a con on somebody else and sell it to them?
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know.
sorts of weirdness. Okay, so you want to keep going with your story?
Prime the pump. I'm not sure.
Okay,
what sounded interesting.
It's all interesting. All right, so you've gone apparently from just you to hiring a few people. How big did it?
We grew to about 20, 30 people at our max, and our gross revenue is probably around $3 million, which was a decent amount for the early 80s.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
The industry collapsed. I don't know if you remember when TI went under. What TI came out with their 99.4, which became the 99.4A, which then they decided is not selling, and the $1,000 machine suddenly was being sold for $50.
Right.
There was a big fallout in the industry then. A lot of companies closed, a lot of software went under, a lot of hardware went under. We didn't have deep pockets. We were totally self-financed, no backers, and we just didn't weather it.
Yeah,
so that was the end of AI.
So that was about 1985 or so, right?
Yep. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. So, did you? Were you doing coding at that point? All along, or did you move to more of a
even with running the company, I was still doing software coding. Plus, we had inside programmers working on projects, and we also had outside programmers that were publishing their works on a royalty basis. Another interesting side note. Do you remember on the Atari a company called Happy Computing?
Yes, I do.
Okay. There was a little interesting story behind that. We had to start putting copy protection on our games because we found that people were pirating. You just said yourself, you pirated a lot of stuff, but some things you actually bought. Well, in general, when people could pirate things, they seemed to do so. So what we ended up doing was coming up with copy protection schemes on the different machines to try to slow that down. And on the Atari, we came up with a pretty good scheme that worked fairly well until this fellow brought out a different drive, the Happy Computing drive, and not only was it extremely faster than the audio bus that the Atari was running on, it could also break the copy protection on our games. The Atari bus, because they overbuilt it, because of what they thought they were going to get in trouble with the FCC, they went ahead and made the bus at an audio speed so that it wouldn't interfere with television or radio. And because of that, the disk drives were inordinately slow. Literally, it was like the disk drive was picking up a phone, dialing over a modem over to the computer, and then sending its messages over. Anyway, Happy Computing came out with a high-speed drive that connected up to a different port. I think he used a cartridge slot, I'm pretty sure, so that he'd be right on the bus. But anyway, it broke our copyright completely. It had a method to break the copyright. And now the interesting story behind that is the fellow who came out with that company was like, I was in Florida at the time. This guy's living over in California, and he's producing these things and selling them. The guy who did it, his name was Richard Adams, and he's my brother.
He's your brother?
Yes.
Wow.
And we had no animosity over it. That was his business plan, and I was perfectly okay with it. He was just meeting a market need. I still sent him all my software for free whenever it came out, and then he'd spend the time making sure he could break the copy protection on it and get it working in his drives.
It's crazy. Well, I have a little story related to that. I did not know that, but I emailed him on January 20th asking him for an interview.
Okay.
And he mailed back and said he can't get approval right now from his current employer. So, I don't know who his current employer is or what that means, but I really wanted that interview. So.
Well, go ahead and mail him back, and you can just tell him that we've chatted. As a matter of fact, I'll talk to him on Facebook, let him know too. Maybe he'll be interested. I don't know. I do know he's got something very interesting going on, and I can't discuss it.
Okay. Right. Well, I don't. Honestly, I don't care what he's got going interesting now. I only care about what happened 30 years.
What was then? Sure.
Yeah.
And maybe if you can explain that to them, that's all you want to talk about, not talk about anything in the present.
Right.
Then
right.
he might be wrong.
Maybe you could tell him I'm a good guy and that'll help.
Okay.
Awesome. All right. So you seem to have a soft spot in your heart for the Atari over the other machines, although you guys release stuff for the TI and Commodore and everything.
Yep. Sorcerer, the Exidi Sorcerer, TRS-80 Model 3s, TRS-80 Model 2s, CPM, just about any machine that might be used during that time period, we probably had something out there. We had games for some of the Japanese, the NEC computer. Like I said, we have the Japanese publishing side. We had games over on the UK side for the, it was the Sinclair was out then, and the Armstrong. I'm trying to remember what the other one was. So, yeah, we supported a very large range of machines. But of them all, like I said, what was running for the cash register in the store was the TI. I still did all my games on a TRS-80 because I still did them originally as text games as far as the adventures go. And then I would just port and my compiler was also on the TRS-80, so then I would just port over the databases to the other machines. But I did greatly enjoy the Atari, and I used that for the basis for my ones with graphics, at least that were using 6502s. So aside from dirty pirates like me, did the Atari people? I mean, was that a good percentage of your business? I honestly don't remember.
Right.
We did a big market also on Commodore too, but that came later when the VIC-20 came out and the Commodore 64. But that's a totally different story. What went on with Commodore? We had a interesting history with them. Atari, we were working as a third-party publisher with Commodore. When they first were coming out with their VIC-20, they actually contacted me and said, we're bringing out this new computer, the VIC-20. I said, yeah, that's one of the few machines that I figure I'll never get my games on because you guys have put all of 5K of memory in it, and I need a minimum of 16K. This thing's not going to work. So it's a dead end. And they said, well, tell you what, we really want to have your games as launch games, and can we talk about it? Maybe we can use something in a cartridge. And I said, oh, okay, yeah, I'd be interested to do that. And so I actually worked with them. They sent an engineer down who knew the machine, and I worked with him very closely to get my games to run off of a cartridge. And they wanted the first 5 adventure games that were in the series at the time. And so I did get them running. We had a big problem, though, getting the games to work because even with the cartridge, there still was barely enough memory. And I literally got to the point where I'm getting things working, and I said, I need like 128 bytes more. I mean, this is so crazy. I can't cut anything out. I'm down to the bone. And the engineer said, well, I got an idea. These cartridges have a built-in autoloader, so when you put them in, they start running. If we take the autoloader out and give directions on how to enter a sys command into BASIC, they can start the cartridge. And I said, let's do it. And that's what we did. And that's why on the VIC-20, the cartridges have a sys command on them, SYS, with a weird number on it. And that was basically to start the cartridge running because I had to pull the loader out. But it worked. Got it going. That was amazing. That was an incredible sell-through, obviously, because it was a launch machine. So people launch titles. So people, when they bought the machine, didn't have a lot of choices. So they moved a lot of those cartridges, and so that was very good. TI also, I had a contract with them to do a cartridge, and we did 2 cartridges for them. Actually, they were really hot and heavy. One cartridge was just a cartridge, and then you had to load the game off of tape. So it was just the engine in the cartridge, and you could you can buy any of the 12 games. The cartridge came with one game. You can buy the other 11 and load them. And then we came out with a 13th, and this was I was writing specifically for them because I had a special contract. They were making it worth my while, and it was a full game, full text adventure game on cartridge, and for the first time ever, it had graphics. So it was a full text adventure game on cartridge with graphics, and that was Return to Pirates Island. And I had to come up with a scheme to get the graphics into the cartridge with the game. And instead of doing compression algorithms, what we ended up using was a set of this was very manual-oriented process because we came up with a set of pieces of pictures that the graphic artist could use to put together, and then he could color them in, so to speak. So sort of like making a stained glass window from pieces, he had all these pieces he could use to make his pictures. And he literally spent a month doing this and working through the issues. But it worked, and it went out. And I was so amazed, so happy with it. And yet, the month after this was finally on the market, that's when TI pulled the plug on the machine, because that thing would have done very well. It started off with very strong sales. But bye-bye TI. There was obviously no more behind that.
Yeah.
Another thing that I ended up doing was working with Marvel Comics. I don't know if you're aware of that.
No. Tell me.
Marvel, again, they approached me. The fellow was Joe Calamari. He was the vice president of Marvel at the time. And he said they wanted to get Marvel characters onto home computers, and he was told I was the person that he should contact. So I thought, wow, pretty cool. Went up to Marvel, met him, met a lot of the staff there. Jim Shooter was the editor at the time. I can't remember who the artist was. I met a very, very big artist. You'd find it on the web if you like. Anyway, I decided that, yes, I definitely wanted to have a relationship with them. So I came out, the first game I had full rights to the whole catalog. I could use anything I want and do anything I wanted with it. So my first game was the Hulk. And they said, well, why don't you do Spider-Man? I said, I want to save that because I want to do Spider-Man right, and I want to sort of ring out what I'm doing with the Hulk. It's a big enough name that it's good enough, but I'm going to do things, and I'm sure I'm going to figure out a better way to do them later. They said, okay, whatever you want to do. So I came up with a concept. It was called Quest Probe. I came up with the name. They also had me outline comic books to go with each game. So I wrote the comic books for the game. They then gave it to their staff. In other words, I was doing the creative design of the overall comic book. They then actually pen and inked it and then put the dialogues in. And once again, if you look at who was doing it, John Romata's, that was who it was. Romata was doing it, the first one. And went ahead and did the graphics. And then I had a major villain in the whole series. There's a whole tie-in as you go through it. He's called the Chief Examiner. And I got a call from them saying, well, we're getting to the point where we need to do the Chief Examiner, and the artists want to know if you have any visual concept of what you'd like to do for him. And I said, yeah, I kind of do. Why don't you use me? And they said, really? I said, yeah. And he said, well, okay, tell you what, put a picture in the mail, let me give it to the artist, and get a call back a couple of days later. He says, yeah, the artist said you look evil enough. They can do this. So if you read the Quest Probe series, you'll see the Chief Examiner in there, and that was based on me. There's also some pictures on the web where you can see pictures of me next to the pictures of the Chief Examiner, and you'll get the drift of how they tie together. And that was a lot of fun working with Marvel. They're really great people. I was supposed to do a series of 12. I ended up doing 3. I was working on the 4th one when AI went under. So 3 I did was Hulk, Spider-Man, and Fantastic Four, and I was working on X-Men at the time. So X-Men got semi-finished. I think there's some bootleg copies of the early adventure of how far I had gotten that people have running on emulators. But it was fun. Marvel's a great bunch of people. Another company that I worked with, got approached by, was wasn't Paramount. It's one of the, I can't remember which movie company it is. Anyway, they were coming out with a new program, a new movie. They decided they were going to make it a cult classic before it even came out. And they were going to have fan clubs. They wanted to have video games come out at the same time. And once again, they said, we were the people they were supposed to talk to. So I said, yes, that's fine by me. The name of the movie was Buckaroo Banzai, Adventures in the Fifth Dimension. If you look it up today, it really is a cult classic.
Absolutely.
When it came out, it was a cult bomb. It literally bombed. It was like one of those movies that, nobody liked, and then later everybody loves. And you can think of other instances. It's a Wonderful Life. That's another good example of that type of movie. Wonderful Life really basically bombed. People don't realize that today. Everybody thinks it was always received wonderful. Anyway, same thing with Buckaroo. And so that was another project we did for outside licensing. Again, a lot of fun. I enjoyed that. Enjoyed the times and the memories. So,
what are you most proud of?
Probably my last game that I did, which I wrote just a couple of years ago. In 2000, I decided, let me see if I could still write adventure games. And I wrote a game. This time, instead of using two-word adventure games, it uses a full sentence English, and it was based on my Return to Pirates Island. I call it sort of Return to Pirates Island 2, or it's just a relook at it, totally redone, new puzzles and new ways of doing things, just to see if I could do it. I enjoyed doing that. And then 3 years ago, I finished up another game that actually took me 10 years. I worked on it for 10 years on and off. I finally got it out. It's called The Inheritance. And it's currently the only game that I actually still sell. It's on my website. If people are interested, they're welcome to download the demo. Demo's for free. And there's probably if they don't use the hint system, there's probably a good couple of weeks of playtime just in the demo alone. The hint system that I put into it is kind of unique. It's a five-tier hint system, where it basically starts off giving you very gentle nudges in the right direction all the way up to the final solution to a puzzle if you really, really are desperate. But of everything, like you asked, what am I most proud of? Probably be that one.
Nice. My question about that is I look at the website, it says The Inheritance, Scott Adams, Bible Adventure #1. Is if you're not, is it only for people who are into
No,
that, or will anyone enjoy it? If you're not a Catholic,
anyone should enjoy it. It doesn't push religion on people. What it does require you to do is read parts of the Bible and be able to logically think things through, and it'll point you in the right direction. So you don't even need a Bible because there's one built into the game. So it is just a gentle nudge to at least point people to the Bible to read. But it doesn't proselytize or knock people over the head. And It's definitely, like all my games, it's family-friendly. And it's a lot more fun when played in a group. Most adventure games can be. If you can get people together playing it where one person's typing and everybody's making suggestions and thinking and talking. My beta testers just have been blown away. They had a blast playing it.
Have you heard of Parsley Adventures?
I didn't understand that. Say again?
Parsley, like the food. Parsley Adventures.
Nope, I have not.
You reminded me when you said playing in a group. It is exactly like a old school text adventure, except there's no computer. There is a person who is the parser. And,
okay.
And if there's 30 people playing, every person takes one command at a time, and so you kind of have to work together in order to solve the puzzle or whatever it is. Yeah, that's fun.
That works well. I've actually played my games that way, where people were interested in what my game was, and since at the time I knew my databases backwards and forwards, I said, well, let's play an adventure game. You tell me what you're going to type in, and I'll tell you exactly what the game is going to say.
Nice. Fun.
So that in effect is very similar to Parsley, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. How did you feel about Infocom?
They were really neat. They came out with some really good stuff. They were doing things for machines that at first required a higher investment from the users because they had to have disk drives and all the other stuff. And I was still targeting the lower-end machines. They were also using a deck, actually, to do their work. That was, instead of working on a TRS-80 or an Apple, they were doing all their work on a mainframe to develop their databases. So they spent a lot of money, and they came up with some really good quality products. But pretty amazing. Unfortunately, I think there's just too much coming out that there wasn't enough of a market. People started to drift away from the text games and getting more and more into wanting a full multimedia experience. And so that hurt them as much as it hurt us. Now, I had graphics in mind, but I did not have the depths to the games that they had. So I get fan mail today. I still get a lot of fan mail, and one of the basic, and by the way, anybody who wants to write me is welcome to. The address is on my webpage, which is msadams.com, msadams.com, and my email is the same, msadams@msadams.com, and I try to answer all my fan mail. Anyway, one of the big threats that I get is people telling me, I go back and I play this game, and it's amazing because I remember it as being such a rich environment, and I'm looking at this thing, and it's so sparse what I'm reading, but you connected with me, and you made me see this place, and it's just amazing. And then I saw a graphic version of it, and it's like, well, that's not how I pictured it at all. It was much better in my mind. Well.
So based on your feedback that you get, what do you think is your most enduring adventure game?
Probably Pirate Adventure. A lot of people remember that and connected with it. That I get a lot of response from. Voodoo Castle, which I didn't do as much of the writing as. My wife back then tried to write an adventure, and I had to clean it up and edit it with her. But it has more of a woman's touch to it, and that seemed to resound with a number of people. Another one that was very popular has an interesting story behind it, and that's Pyramid of Doom. That was adventure number 8, and that's set in the sands of Egypt, and a lot of people remember that and the Purple Worm and a lot about it. The interesting thing is I didn't write that one at all. I got a submission in the mail from somebody saying, I wrote this adventure game, take a look at it. It runs on your engine. I'm going, what? Wait a minute. I never released the engine. I've never told anyone how my engine works. It's totally proprietary. You couldn't have. And so I took it and started playing it, and sure enough, he did it on my engine. It was a decent game. And I contacted him. His name's Alvin Files. He's still around. He's in Oklahoma now, retired, but he was a lawyer, and he was just interested in it. And he took my machine language and disassembled it and figured out what it was doing and figured out my language, which is really, really awesome. And he's not the only one that did that. Another fellow did it, which is, I think it's number 12 in my series, Golden Voyage by William DeMoss. He did the same exact thing. And in both cases, neither one knew each other, neither one had contacted each other. I worked with them. I thought, this is so amazing that they're able to do it. I want to get their stuff published. So I'll give them publishing rights, I'll give them royalties, and I'll edit it with them because they were still rough gems, and I had learned a lot of things about how an adventure should flow and so forth. So I worked with them from that point of view, but just amazing what they did. So anyway, back to your question, probably Pirate Adventure. That's where the line is, say, yo-ho, everything spins around, and suddenly I'm elsewhere. And a lot of people remember the mongoose. And if you don't remember the mongoose, I won't tell you about it, because you got to play the game, and you'll see why they remember the mongoose.
I don't remember the mongoose, so I'll have to go back. I'm not sure I ever played that one. So I know you had contracts with TI and Commodore. Did you ever attempt a contract with Atari?
Nope. Did not. I remember when Tramiel got kicked out of Commodore and then went over and bought Atari, Jack Tramiel.
Yep.
And then brought out the ST, which supposedly didn't stand for anything, but everybody knew it stood for Sam Tramiel.
Right.
I had dealings with Tramiel at Commodore, and none of them were good. So I wasn't about to approach him. But I still supported the machine as a third party. And keep in mind that all these companies that I got the contracts with, they all approach me. Yeah. I never really reached out and chased any of the other companies. So no, I didn't approach Atari, and they didn't approach me.
All right. It's probably for the best.
Don't know.
I've heard stories about other companies having to go out of business when the Tramiels didn't pay them. Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, I believe that.
Yep.
Still in all, the machines I liked. Other than its audio bus, the Atari was a great system.
Yeah. Do you have anything that, like Atari source or any source code or anything from back in the day that has never seen the light of day, has never been released?
I don't know. I've got boxes of stuff in the back. And matter of fact, the Strong Museum out in Rochester recently contacted me. Actually, they wanted to talk to me today, but I said I already had something scheduled, so I'm going to be talking to them tomorrow. They're interested in picking up donations for their museum wing.
Awesome. I've heard a lot of good things about them.
Excuse me. Yes, I have too. I honestly don't know what I've got.
Find any Atari stuff that you don't think is public that you don't mind sharing. I can archive it and send it back to you. And,
okay.
You can move it on.
There was one other program, and I wish I did keep, and I don't. I know I don't have it. But I did a video arcade game for the Atari. Okay. A new language came out for the Atari, and it was called Forth, Forth. Not sure if you're aware of it, but it was a new programming language. It was really strange. It was page-orientated and written backwards. And it caught my fancy, and I thought I'd like to try writing something in it. This is an interesting language. I want to see what I could possibly do with it. Mm-hmm. And I had wanted to do a video game on the Atari because I was really fascinated with sprites. So I wrote a game called Sapphire, where it's a burning building that has sapphires spread around inside. You play a top-down view looking at a fireman going in, and he would be pulling a hose behind him, going through the building, trying to put out fires, break down doors, and get to the treasures. He would come across medical kits. Fire could cut across and burn his hose, so you no longer have water. He could pick up fire extinguishers that he could use for short term, so he'd go back and fix his hose, and you'd go through levels and levels. And it wasn't Sapphire spelled like the jewel. It was Sapphire, S-A, Fire, for Scott Adams Fire. And I got it going. I got it going into beta, but this was about the time that AI went under. Sadly, all the disks and everything, I have no idea what happened to them. And it required the Forth compiler to run. So just a little bit of trivia.
If you could send a message to the Atari 8-bit computer users that still exist, and you can right now, what would you tell them?
Okay. Enjoy your computer. It's a great piece of hardware, and it's got a tremendous back history to it. And there's probably utilities and games and other things that you don't even know exist available for it. It was big in its time, and there were a lot of projects going on.
Good answer. Thank you. I think that's about all I have for you then, Scott.
Okay, great talking to you, Kevin, and great talking to everybody out there in Atari land, and enjoy your hardware.
Great. Thanks so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
If you enjoy these interviews and would like to contribute something, I encourage you instead to donate to one of our favorite organizations, the Internet Archive, at archive.org. The Internet Archive is a nonprofit digital library with the stated mission of universal access to all knowledge. They've done incredible things to preserve computer history, including hosting thousands of programs in an in-browser Atari emulator, creating the Wayback Machine, and offering full-page scans of countless Atari computer books and magazines. Make your tax-deductible contribution at archive.org/donate.